Hi there, Lyndon Sommert from EXP Realty and the Alberta Real Estate team. And just happy to share with everybody the Real Estate Investment Workshop. So everybody's got a booklet to work on. And I just want, before we start anything, I want to ask people, I guess, why are you here? Why do we want to learn about real estate investment? Why is that?
Make money.
To make money? Okay, right. And I guess it's about our future, right? So one of the things that that is so important, you ask people, what are you interested in the future? And everybody says financial freedom. That's a very common thing. Of course, happiness is very important, and you got to be healthy, of course. But financial freedom is what everybody is shooting for. So 98% of all millionaires are done through real estate. That is amazing. So again, some of those things that we don't hear from some of our financial advisors, which is quite interesting out there, right? I guess one of the things is that why do people not get involved in real estate investment?
Landlording.
Landlording, yes, landlording. It's like, oh, that renter from hell, really. So, I mean, that's certainly one of the reasons. And the other thing is people just aren't knowledgeable, and they think that they can't do it as well. So I just find it really amazing. You talk to some people, and once they find out how easy it actually can be, they go, oh, maybe I will give it a try. So it's really just a lack of education more than anything. So let's take a look here. So again, the reason is why real estate? Well, for sure it's a proven concept. And if you just compare, so what other business in the world is going to give you financial freedom? Silence. Because there really isn't any. A lot of people get involved in multi-level marketing. That is a way, and some people have done it. How else have some people made millions?
Lottery.
Lottery, yes. What are our chances at the lottery? Yeah. So
4 million to 1.
4 million to 1?
40 million to 1.
40 million to 1. Okay. Not great odds.
No.
So real estate's one of these things that's really attainable. It's a proven concept. Why? Because people have been investing in real estate since, 1400s maybe, something like that. So in Canada, it's probably been about 200 or 300 years, for sure. Of course, a lot more in Europe, but it's definitely proven. So one of the major things if you take a look, number 2 says real estate's an asset, meaning it can be seen, it's real, it's not just paper, stocks, bonds. For me, it's a little bit scary. If I was to have all of my money, all my hard money that I saved on a computer screen, that a hacker could actually come in and what? And erase it. Has that happened before? Yeah, that's happened before. Now, is there insurance and stuff for that? Yes, absolutely. But also, even people in stocks. There's some people that have been involved in the stock market and put almost all of their investment in the stock market, and what's happened? Well, yeah, so has anybody here heard of Nortel? Yeah, so that's one of the more famous ones in Canada, and there's been many, many more. But even right now, the stock market's not doing that great, and we know that there's a lot of money to be made in that too, but you have to be educated in that as well. But real estate's one of those things that's very attainable, where the masses that get involved in real estate investment do succeed. So I really like the fact, and most people do, is that you can touch it. It's that tangible thing. You can touch it and feel it. So real estate offers great flexibility. You can cash out for your profits, rent it out for cash flow, renovate, or even remortgage. Remortgage for leverage. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing is how can you buy 5 homes in the next 5 years, and that's done through leverage. So how much money do you need for that? Well, I think you're going to find out you don't need as much as you actually think you need. So definitely a job is a good thing, though. Very good thing. All right. So one of the things I just love, and I know a lot of investors do too, and I've been lucky enough over the last 30 years to deal with a lot of investors, really lovers of banks. The banks are making all this money, everybody says, and all these billions of dollars and whatnot. And that's true. When you take a look at those, you got to remember that Canada only really has about 5 or 6 major banks anyways. But when you take a look at that and people say, hey, you know what? I get to take advantage of the bank here. Because the bank is putting up the majority of the money with no stake in the appreciation of that property. So as it goes up in value, that it always does. In fact, if you look at the last 20 years, it's gone up on an average of 6% per year. A lot of people say 6% per year, that's pretty high. I mean, if I look at the last 3 or 4 years, it hasn't gone up 6%. Because that is an average. There are some years that it's gone up 20% and more. So when we take a look at real estate, especially for long-term real estate, we take a look at it as a long-term investment. So we need to take a look at it further than here. What's going to happen 10, 15, 20 years from now? So if you take a look at it from that standpoint, which we should be planning in the future for sure, it's okay to have these short-term investments, but long-term is really where the winners get paid off. So it's about as intriguing as it comes to investing, especially when you add joint ventures, which means you can do it without any money invested. Joint ventures is something that we'll talk about a little bit later on, but the point is that you could actually become a real estate investor with no money. And many people have done it. I know people that have hundreds of properties and they've never put $1 of their own in. That is amazing. You know, does that happen overnight? Does that education happen overnight? No. Again, we won't be able to get too detailed in that, but just underneath here, you know, I just have a few notes for you guys. And one of the things is, where is the market going? What's going to happen? Well, I don't have a crystal ball, because if I had a crystal ball, I probably wouldn't be here. I'd probably be on a beach somewhere with about $100 million in my bank. But we do have a great idea of where things are going based on the economics and based on what's happening right now. One thing I love about the Edmonton area is that it's lower priced. What I mean by that, why I love that, is because I actually know what's going to happen in the future. I know, because it's at that point. It's in a conservative number where the cost of building is a certain point above the cost of building. The profit and the value of homes is just above the cost of building. Finally got that out. All right. So if that makes sense, what it means is the builders have to make profit. We know that Edmonton is planning for 2 million people in the next 30 years. Does that mean we need new builds?
Yeah.
Do we also believe that builders are going to do this just for the heck of it? No.
Yeah.
Do we also know that the cost of building is going to go up?
Yeah.
Of course it is. So if you just put 2 and 2 together, you know that especially in the Edmonton market, it is going to go up. How much is the question? But we know it's going up. So this fear of market crashing and all these sorts of things, it doesn't happen in Edmonton. Why? Because of where the prices currently are. And of course, people are coming here right now in droves, and it's about 50,000 people a year, it seems, right now. That's amazing when you take a look at that. And of course, that makes sense when they're saying there's going to be 2 million people in the next 30 years here. So all of these things tell us where the market is going, and that's up. And there's also some very unique things that are happening here, and that's called the city is getting involved in creating more density, which means the changing of bylaws, the changing of zoning that allows for builders to come in and do infill projects and build up. So when they do that, what happens to land? The value of the land goes up when more people want it. When I can put more buildings and more dwellings on a piece of land, I know that that land is going to go up in value. So again, another reason why we know what's going to be happening in the greater Edmonton area. Okay, just a few notes there for you. Let's move on. So there are 4 different types of investing or investors. I'm sure there's more, but there's 4 major ones. Now, the one thing everybody wants to get in, because everybody makes millions of dollars doing it, and that is flips. Now, I've had a long career, and I've dealt with a lot of people that are flipping properties, and it is great. It's super for people, but there have been some times when people haven't made money. Maybe they've anticipated wrong. So we are in a growing market. We do know that flipping does work. Why? Because lots of people are still continuing to do it. But if we just take a look here, there's a large number of investors wanting to flip and sell homes in 6 months for a higher price and profit. Most in this category usually end up with less profit than anticipated and put more personal hours than expected. Although there's a large amount of these investors, only the extremely organized ones succeed in the long term. Okay, and this isn't to deter people. This is to be real. This is to understand that the average profit in a flip is $20,000 to $30,000. That's average. Have I seen people make $100,000 in a flip? Yes. Have I seen people lose $5,000 or $10,000? Yes, I have. So you have to really understand that, and of course make sure that you have the right team involved, which of course is having the right agent, of course your lawyers and tradespeople as well. Very, very important. There's different ways to do flips as well. You can actually buy a property that you know is going to go up in value for one particular reason. Maybe it's rezoning, which a lot of people are playing that game right now. They're buying properties knowing that it's going to be changing from RF1 to RF3, which is going to create that high density. A lot of savvy investors are buying these types of properties right now. Ones that are a good size that you can build these. So the flip is then the time for it. So what's nice to have on those particular properties, of course, is some sort of income that's coming in, unless you have an exorbitant amount of money, which a lot of these investors do. But there are different ways to do flips. Okay, so tradespeople, I find that average person is very, very important. A lot of people are very handy and they can do some things themselves, which totally saves people a lot of money. There's no question about that. But let's just keep in mind the average is around $20,000 to $30,000. And anybody pretty much can get involved in the flips. It really is a no-lose situation when you take a look at the flexibility of a property. In other words, if it doesn't sell at the profit that you want, you might decide to do something called a BRRRR. And we'll get into more of that a little bit later, which means refinancing that property and keeping it as a rental property. Okay, short terms. So as the real estate prices go up, well, continuing on upwards, go up and down with a continued upward swing over many, many years, investors often ride the wave of an area of substantial growth, buy low, sell high. This is anywhere between 1 to 5 years, depending on many factors of the marketplace and personal situations. What I mean by that is sometimes people get involved in these short-term flips, buying on the time of changes, and something happens in their personal life. So they end up selling for whatever reason, and this is short-term investing that just happens when they don't really need it to. So how do we succeed in this? We succeed in this by having a great idea of what's happening in the marketplace, and we just happen to be in a short-term hold time right now like I've never seen before. Now, if I was to predict what 2005 was going to be like as compared to 2006, we would have made a heck of a lot of money. But you can't predict these things. What's happening now is predictable things. We know what's going to be happening here over the next few years. And in earlier talking to one of our mortgage brokers, Mateo here, he was letting us know what his thoughts are, with the marketplace. And the great feeling that's out there with builders and so many people that we're talking to is, hey, buy now, because next year it could go up substantially. And that is a very common thing that's happening right now. And of course, we know the spring markets are always quite busy. Pressure builds. When inventory stays low, prices can go up very, very quickly. And that happened a year and a half ago here in Edmonton, where prices went up within a 1 month period approximately 10%. Yeah. Pretty cool. Let's do that. Okay, so number 3, my favorite. Why? Because everybody becomes a winner, and that is long-term holds. This is the most successful group because it's almost foolproof. The plan is simple as long as you're in long-term, anywhere from 5 to 25 years. You ride inflation. Although there's ups and downs along the way, equity and appreciation will continue to widen. And in fact, over 95% of millionaires, it says here 98, have made their money this way. I'll never forget, when I was renting on White Avenue, I met a guy, he was the landlord, and he was the owner of the building. His name was Rennie. And, you know, I said, why are you doing this? You know, he was about 67 years old and, you know, just ancient to me at the time. And he said to me, he says, you know, real estate is just one of those things that you could just never fail with. I've had this building for 30 years, and all I do every month is just go around and collect money for myself. And so that was his fun. And, you know, I know this guy, you know, died a very rich man. I'm sure his kids were all very, very happy. He had a wonderful life. And that was my first beginning of just hearing from somebody that was succeeding themselves. As I became an agent and grew in the business, I know for sure that long-term holds is an amazing way for you to have financial freedom. And that's what we're really sharing with everybody today. Okay, any questions on those first three? All right, pretty good here. So the fourth one that we added in, because I get a lot of questions on this, is recreational and or retirement property. So it's called lifestyle. So uniquely, there are some interesting things out there. A fractional ownership. You know, I had one of my clients buy some fractional ownership in the Radium area not long ago. I was involved in some Vancouver Island fractional ownerships. So what that means is you can actually buy very low. You can, from $20,000 to $30,000, you can buy 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 weeks. So that's an interesting way to get involved in retirement or recreational real estate. They do go up in value, for sure. Yeah, different from the old time. You know, when you go to Mexico.
Timeshares.
Timeshares, of course. Fractional ownership is much different than the timeshares. So one of the interesting things that's driving that recreational market is baby boomers. So we're right in the middle of the baby boomers making their moves right now. And what's happening is what they want to retire well and go to lifestyle. So we're talking about lake properties and things that have to do with just that relaxed lifestyle. There's a very limited amount of that. But how many people can afford these? So if we take the whole world, 100% of people out there, really only about 5% of those people can afford those types of properties. But how many people is that? I mean, if you take a look at the Edmonton area, you know, of baby boomers, how many would it be? Let's call it 100,000 people, perhaps, in that baby boomer and that sort of age, you know, that's in there. Well, 5% of that is what? 5,000. Is there 5,000 properties, you know, in and around there? No, well, they end up buying a little bit in Mexico, and they're buying in Phoenix, and, you know, all these areas, as well as the lakes. But the point is that there's a limited number of those things. And that's why supply and demand, why they're going up in value. So recreational retirement properties are also an excellent investment as well, especially at this time right now. Okay, let's move on here. So those are the types of investors that are out there. Now what I found as well is it's so important when you're successful to know your stuff. I mean, I think we'd all agree that knowledge creates confidence. The more you know, the better choices that you're going to make, right? So how do we do that? Well, how do we know our stuff? Number one here, rents. Now, this age right now with the internet and whatnot, it's not that difficult to know what's happening with rents. But something interesting is happening now. Supply and demand. If you take a look at what's happening in Alberta right now, you'll know that that rents are on the rise. You know, in fact, many places there's a waiting list for people, and landlords get to pick and choose who they want. So let's take a look at it here. Whether it's daily, monthly, yearly rents, who does daily rents today?
Airbnb.
Airbnb, or
Verbo.
VRBO. They're actually before Airbnb. So is that an active market? Yes, very active market. Didn't hear about that one? There you go, Verbo. Yeah. So again, you know, I attended an Airbnb, I guess workshop it was not long ago, and it was amazing how many people showed up at that and the sort of information they had. So you can get involved in that too, but be careful if you do that in condos. You got to make sure that they accept that. All right. The way that renters find properties has drastically changed in the last few years. Renters are now going online. You know, of course, before this, there wasn't online, and we've been teaching this for a long time, right? But really, people are just scanning and scanning. People are just very quick today. So again, all you have to do is know your rents, and you start to have that confidence about what's happening. You start understanding what your own return on investment is going to be. So knowledge. Neighborhoods. One of the most popular questions that I get asked is, where do I invest in? What's the best place to invest in? Well, there's three amazing words in real estate that are true. They've always been true, and that is location, location, location. Absolutely key. You want to have that. It's the biggest contributor to rent. Other indicators include parking, garages, parking pads, size, square footage. When looking for a rental property, there's a simple formula of preferred areas of choice. And that's an interesting one too. You think about that, with all the changes that's happening to zoning and whatnot right now, the cost of build stays the same. That's the consistency thing, right? Now, if I can build multiple properties on one piece of land, and I know that this area over here is generally worth 20 or 30% more, if I make that division of the cost of land to those properties, the value far outweighs it to be in a higher quality area. Far outweighs it because of the value of those particular areas. So I hope that made sense to everybody, but what we do know for sure is that a lot of the savvy investors today are making sure that they're buying in quality areas, for sure. Okay, so be very careful about those ones that are just that teal out there. We want to make sure that we're in the right areas. So we will share with some of the trending areas a little bit later on today. Okay, so neighborhoods, very important to know what's happening. Just a small little tidbit in there. If you see a massive amount of infills going up in an area, you likely know that that area is going to increase in price because your neighbors are getting higher and higher. So do we want to be the highest or the lowest price in a neighborhood? My home, I want it to be the lowest, for sure. I don't want to be the highest because the lower ones will drag me down. The higher ones will pull me up in value. So again, another reason to get in a good quality area. How to stay knowledgeable: scanning newspapers, websites, communication with agents, other investors. There's some investment groups out there just like this. Also, I find that CMHC has a wonderful website for information. Man, that is information overload. I think you could actually be there for years going through the information. That wonderful Crown Corporation of ours.
Sagent is pretty good too.
Which one?
Sagent.
Oh, Sagent. Yes, of course. They got some great information there. They're great competition, thank goodness.
Yeah, they're great. They're all good.
Yeah. Okay, so of course that's the other major insurer. Landlording. Oh my gosh, we're going to go into this a lot, but again, when we started this off, people were like, why do people not get involved into it? And even over Thanksgiving, I was with my family, and I said to my niece, I said, why don't you keep that property? She says, come over, I want to know what the property's going to be worth. I said, why don't you keep it? Because you can afford to get another one, just rent it out. She goes, I know that's the smart thing to do, but I do not want to be a landlord at all. I said, really? I could show you how to do it quite easily. He says, nope, just not interested. And you know what? That's totally understandable. That's totally okay. Kind of allows more of it for us anyways. So, and again, whether it doesn't matter what personality you are, we can all learn how to do it properly out there. So those are the major things about knowing your stuff so that you're educated and you have confidence in knowing what to do. Okay, let's move forward here. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about some numbers. We're going to talk about ROI, stands for return on investment, of course. And simply put, it's the money you make on the money you invest. Again, how we take advantage of the banks because we're leveraging things. I buy something for $200,000. I can actually qualify perhaps for 5% down. That's $10,000. Some closing costs and stuff in there. That property goes up to $250,000. I get all of that. 'And the bank invested 90% of the value in that. That's incredible if you think about that. And again, one of the major reasons why people invest in real estate. Okay, so just an example here. $50,000 invested, increasing at 6% per year compounded. So this is just the conventional type of investing. So stocks, bonds, this sort of thing. $50,000 in 5 years is going to become to $66,911. After 10 years, it's $90,000. After 20 years, it's $160,000. Pretty good numbers. And you know, I sat down not long ago with a financial advisor, and he said, well, real estate's actually gone up the same amount as stocks and bonds. And it actually has. If you take a look at it, they're very close, they're up very, very close. But what they don't take into consideration is all the extra money that the bank has invested for you. And that's, again, the biggest difference that we point out about 6 times today already, and I might do another 10.
Gold is the same way.
And gold is the same way. That's right. Yeah, precious metals. You bet. Very interesting. So we compare that, and you take a look at $50,000 invested in real estate, increasing at 6%, based on a down payment of $50,000 on a $250,000 home property. After 5 years, that $50,000 based on that is $336,000. What? Bizarre. And then the 450, 820. If you take a look at the ROIs, they're about 7 times the difference of investing in real estate as compared to conventional investing. 7 times the return. People are like, well, I don't believe that. The thing is, it's true. It's factual information based on what's happened over the last 200 years out there. Factual information. So again, why don't people do it? Well, for the reasons that we talked about. They don't want a landlord, they're scared, they're not knowledgeable, they might not have the right job, they might not qualify, all these sorts of reasons. Okay, but again, the point is the comparison. This is what we're really comparing here. As you can see, the results are very, very significant here. So let's move on. Okay, we got this really cool graph that I think just points it out like ever before, as if I have to really sell this anymore. But if you just take a look at it, you know, this amazing graph here, let's just show it to the group there. So what happens here, we went over the numbers all there, but we put it in a graph. It is just so significant. Again, after 20 years, you know, you're at $160,000 and it was real estate at $700,000. So, you know, I know these numbers sound like they're all over the place, but you know, these are just numbers that we just did with the calculator, put them together, checked them twice, and they do work. So let's look at a very basic buy. I find that your first home and the first property that you do buy as an investment should be simple. Why? Because we want success. When we have success, it's going to make you want to do more. Did you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So start off slow, and then we can keep the ball rolling, okay? So, what's a good buy? So, let's just take a property for $250,000. People say, should I buy a townhouse? Should I buy a condo? You know, should I buy a house and whatnot? I always recommend, if you can, try to afford an actual single-family dwelling. I find that it's just a lot more solid. There's a lot more going with it. When you're dealing with condos, you're dealing with boards, you're dealing with directors that might not know what they're doing. You know, all sorts of things out there. And I'm not saying that condos aren't a good investment. In fact, townhouses are being quite strong recently. But things can happen, and there are some horror stories out there. Those horror stories that you hear out there, understand, are also a very small percentage. But in general, the point is, single-family dwellings is, I feel, the better investment and what I've seen most investors do well with. So, can I buy a house for $250,000? The answer is yes, I can.
Definitely.
In good old Edmonton, we still can buy a home for $250,000. We actually have a man in the room here that is buying one right now for that. So, it's absolutely doable, and that is really cool that you can do that. Now, is it that home with that beautiful legal basement suite? No, it's not. That's why we're going to take a look at this conservatively. Can we be more aggressive? Can we buy that home with that suite? Can we get a higher return? The answer is yes. But let's think about this again on a more basic level. and then grow from there. $250,000. If we do it on a more conventional basis, which is not using CMHC, okay, so I have a home already, I have some money, I want to buy an investment property, that's going to cost $50,000 cash that you need to have to put down. That means I have a loan amount of $200,000. Taxes are going to be anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000. Insurance probably around $1,000. We added some vacancy. We added some repairs. We did base this model on 3.9% or 4%. People are just really hoping that 1.5% or 2% is going to come back, and I don't think it's going to come back. So just, you might want to put that on the side. I know your mortgages are coming due for a lot of people, but you have to understand about what is the reality today. My first home that I bought in 1992 was the very first time that interest rates went into single digits for about 8 years. 9.9%. I'm like, woohoo! Now the price of homes were much less then, so it was still affordable. But it was just really interesting when you talk about interest rates. In fact, the average interest rate is probably about 6 or 7% if you take a look at it over the last 25 years. So, anyways, that's what we base it on. And today you can go 25 or 30 years as well. Anyways, we've come to some monthly payments on that of between $900 to $1,000 in there. Total expenses are going to be probably around $1,300 or more. So we adding that all in there, and we did not put in a management fee here of around 5 to 10%. But that's when you're doing your first one. Generally, you're going to landlord yourself as well in there. So, and what's the market rent on that? Again, we tried to be conservative. If I've just got that basic home, maybe I've got a basementless home that I'm renting. It's just a good 3-bedroom home with a nice garage, or I've got a smaller home with a basement with a garage. These are very rentable properties, and $1,500 is the number that we used here, and I think that's low, because a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment today is around $1,400. So again, we're thinking about this like, okay, we are doing this on a conservative basis. After 12 months, my positive cash flow for that year, nothing big, is $2,600. People are going, woohoo! That's not a lot, because the effort that I put into it. Oh, but wait, it gets much better than that. When I take a look at my property value, well, in year number 1, if we take our 6%, it goes to $265, and then $280, and $297, and then $315. Where's it going to stop? We don't know. Is that aggressive thinking or not? No, we just took the averages over the last 20 years. We don't know what's going to happen. It could be amazingly more, or it might be a little bit less. We don't know. It's up to you to decide for that. But if you take a look at that, and now you put in things like the depreciating mortgage and the appreciating value, those numbers really start to make sense. All right. So there's some information that you don't have in your booklets right now that I'm going to talk about so you might want to find something to write some notes on. I'm going to mention to you 7 different ways to finance. Okay? Number 1, probably the most popular one out there, and Mr. Banker, feel free to come in here, but
right.
Is buying a home for less than 20% down.
Can do that.
All right, so that's the most popular. So we need to use then an insurer, was a Sagen or CMHC or First.
No, it's Canada Guarantee.
Oh, Canada Guarantee. Sorry. Yeah. So used to be called something different than it before. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, Sagen used to be called
Jim.
Genworth.
That's right.
And the name
Okay.
changed, yeah.
The names keep changing. Other people bought them out. They saw how lucrative it was. I think it only cost them $14 billion for it, but
Yeah.
who's saying things. Okay, but CMHC, 5 to 20% down. This is the way a lot of people can get involved in real estate. Now, is this your first home? Sure, go ahead and do that, right? Do they allow that to happen on the second home? Yeah, that's a possibility too. It's really up to your banker and it's up to the situation with it, but that's one way to do it. So you can get as low as 5% down. In fact, even less than that if you take into consideration some of the programs that are out there. Okay, so 5 to 20% down. Number 2, conventional. So this is what we've been really taking a look at here for the average investor. They're going to be putting 20% down. So what that means is there is no insurer. There's no, see, a lot of people want to, I'm going to collect my 20% because I don't want to pay those insurance fees. You know what, I'm all for that. But if you wait a year to do that, and that extra 2 or 3% that goes on your mortgage, but the value of that home goes up by 5%, did you win? No. So be careful about your thoughts. You're not right or wrong, just understand what the possibilities are and the possibilities that can happen with it. Question?
And in today's market, in some cases, the high ratio rate is so low compared to the conventional rate that it's almost parity with
Okay.
you taking an insured 4% premium charge.
Oh, great. So
And then also retrospect, you can also, do 5% down and then buy something with a legal suite.
okay.
Live in the upstairs, still get that 5% down and still get your investment property.
You might not have heard that, but the interest rates are actually higher on a conventional side as they are with an insured side.
Exactly.
So does it make sense? Well, for a lot of people it does, obviously, because a lot of people do 20% down to avoid it. But everybody has their own story and their own way of doing things. Number 3 way of it to finance is joint ventures. Wow, I didn't even know this existed. Again, I was so lucky to meet some sophisticated investors and how to invest with other people's money. It comes down to a very basic concept, and that is a lot of people want to invest in real estate, but don't have the time and energy to do that. So they say, I've got lots of money, Mr. Dentist or Doctor or whoever it is. I'll go into a joint venture with you. You take care of finding the right property, you take care of doing any fix-ups, you take care of landlording, you take care of all that stuff, and guess what? We'll split it 50-50. At the end of the day, pretty sweet deal for both people. Now, are you going to be able to talk to your dentist tomorrow and collect $150,000 to do that? Probably not. You might need to get, unless they're friends, but you might need to get a little bit more organized and learn about that. And that's the sort of thing that we can teach you about, is how to do that sort of thing. A lot of people are doing it today, and a lot of people have become very wealthy doing that. So joint ventures, wonderful thing. Something that's new, and we actually have a handout for everybody here. You might have it, and that is, it says agreement for sale. What we call it, seller financing. Okay, so seller financing is a term we use. Why? So people can understand it. That's all. Seller financing means that people that cannot qualify for a mortgage can buy a house through an offer to purchase called an agreement for sale. And it is a sweet, sweet plan that I was, again, lucky enough to learn about 10 years ago, and have been able to help so many people have ownership of their homes without dealing with the banks. Because guess what? There's a lot of people that have money in cash and are great quality people with great credit, but they don't have the ability, because of what they state on their taxes and whatnot, to qualify the way the banks want it. Notice of assessment. So great quality people, and then we have these sellers out here that maybe want to sell their home at a certain price, or they're having trouble selling their home, and they're saying, hey, I don't need all the equity from my home. I'll give you a 5-year term at a good interest rate so I can make some money on it, but I'll allow you to have some ownership of your own home. So people that don't want to rent, they want ownership, but they can't qualify to bank, can do it through seller financing or an agreement for sale. And again, that's a course all on its own. Certainly sit down with anybody. It is absolutely done on a regular basis. In fact, there's a large group of people, it's the Muslim community, doing it. It's called halal financing, which is very, very similar to seller financing. And just some wonderful, wonderful situations that has happened from that.
A quick question on this one.
Yes.
I think do you have to take a own mortgage after some time, or?
You have to qualify eventually.
Oh.
Yeah. So at the end of the term, there's options. Okay, there's 3 basic options. So number 1 is we try to get people in a position to qualify for a mortgage at that time. Okay, it doesn't happen all the time, because they don't want to pay the government so much, so they're having a lot of write-offs and they're not having that. So then it's like, okay, what do? I don't qualify for that mortgage after the 5 years. What do I do? Well, you could approach that seller and say, hey, would you do it again? Would you do another 3 or 5 years? I'll give you another 1% interest rate, whatever it is. That happens quite often. I would say probably about 25 to 50% of the time when I have people coming to the end of their terms, they actually go further with it because it works for both people. It's a benefit for both people. And number 3, you can sell the property. You can sell the property and make the money from that. So really, there's 3 excellent options that are there through the seller financing out there. Now, it's very technical. We have to have the right lawyers that understand how it works. There's not a ton of them. There's just certainly not a lot of agents that know how to do that as well. And it's a bit of an education process. It takes a little bit longer to make that happen, but it's totally doable, and we can make that happen for people as long as you're motivated as well. Now, number 5, one of the ones I love is private capital financing. Now, those private financing guys like that too. What does that mean? That means you can buy a property from a private lender without having to go to a major bank. But there's got to be a catch. What's the catch? Higher interest rates and usually a setup fee as well. That setup can be anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 for the setup fee. But it's a way to get in, and actually a lot of flippers, a lot of people that can't qualify for that flip mortgage, and banks don't really like flip mortgages anyways, but private financing is a great way to do that, and you can certainly do that. And I'm just going to touch on the BRRRR, B-R-R, okay, which means buy, renovate, rent, refinance. Very popular, works like a charm, but you still have to be able to qualify for that. But it's amazing when you buy a property for $250,000. I put $30,000 in. That property could be worth $320,000 or $350,000, all depending. Now I can use that value and refinance. Often, maybe even make some money with that. Great concept used all the time by knowledgeable investors. Number 6, CMHC Select. Now I need to mention this. Why? Because it's exciting stuff. CMHC has come in, and I'm sure with a little push from the government saying, hey, we need more density. We need to make more apartment buildings. So what they've said is, we'll give you a lower interest rate. We'll let you amortize it over 50 years, which brings those prices down so much. And you can build an apartment building as long as it qualifies. And it has to qualify on by way of energy efficiency. It has to qualify by way of the amount of rent. I believe there's a certain percentage, around 20%, that needs to be below market values for a certain period of time. But you add all these factors in, and it really allows for a more average person to build a multiple unit building. And this is one of the major things that is happening in the Edmonton area right now. And it's a wonderful program, for sure. One of the biggest problems is they're so busy, it can take up to 6 months to qualify for this, mostly because you're at the bottom of the pile. That's how busy it is right now. Understand this is Canada-wide, not just in our town, so that's why they're so busy with this. Amazing program that I've learned so much over the last year about, and if you have any interest in doing that, you do have to have some equity, you have to have some wealth, but certainly not as much as the average person thinks. So very, very exciting stuff out there. And number 7, the last one we won't talk too much about, and that is rent to own. There are some companies out there, if some people are interested in getting a property, we can help you do that and get into a rent-to-own program with very little down or almost nothing down. But there is some qualification that does come with that as well. You can't be a person that's never paid your bill in 3 years. So just to give you an idea. Okay, so I know that wasn't in our books, but I thought since we put it out there on the flyer that I better talk about it, or else people would be mad. Okay, so we're just going to talk about the power of leverage next, and I hope I'm not talking too fast. Okay, good. Okay, So the magic of leverage. So your current home. So this is a very typical person out there, and we came across a lot of this about 10 years ago, where people were starting to just learn about real estate as an investment, and they were in stocks and bonds, and they were sort of tired because they were losing some money, and they thought, well, maybe I'll invest in some real estate. So something came out called HELOCs. So home equity line of credit. I don't know if that's when it came out, but started using it a lot more. And if we just take a look here, where could the investment money come from? You may have more money than you think. If you've owned your home for over 5 years, you may have more than enough to invest. Below is just an example of how this might be achieved. So if I've got a home value of $350,000, perhaps I've got a mortgage on that of $180,000. That means I've got $170,000 worth of equity in that home. That's exciting. It's even more exciting when you get 10 of those. But we go to the bank and we say, okay, Mr. Bank, I would like to do a HELOC. So in other words, what they do is they'll take the value of the home, they'll send an appraiser out, take a look at that value of the home, make sure that value is there, and give you up to about 80% of the value of that home. You do have to qualify for that, but it is certainly a way that so many people are able to achieve capital to do this. So if we take a look at that, $170,000 worth of equity, 20% of that is about $70,000. That means I have $100,000 of investment capital. So again, it's like, wow, I have this money, I can use it. A lot of people are a little bit scared because everybody wants to be mortgage free. Would you like to be mortgage free with $350,000 home, or have 5 properties? They're not mortgage free, but you've got $1 million worth of equity. Which one would you want? I don't think that's any question. I think everybody would say, I would rather have the $1 million. Of course. So that's why what we're getting at here. And again, we just talked a little bit about the home equity line of credit that we just talked about. HELOC. Okay. How do we get those 5 properties now? So now we got $100,000 to work with. I got 100 G's in my pocket. Don't spend it all in one place. I'm telling you right now. Everybody wants that Ferrari. Actually, you can't buy a Ferrari for that. Can you even buy a Ford for that? I don't know. But we got $100,000. We're ready to invest in real estate. Okay, so here we go. Stage 1, of course, get that done. Stage 2, strategy to refinancing the existing portfolio so you can invest in 2 more properties. Okay, let's go to stage 3. Let's make it happen. So let's say we've got $50,000 again for 2 homes. So we do the same thing that we just talked about from the very beginning. We put $50,000 in, we buy a property for $250,000. So now I've got 3 properties. I've got my property that's worth $350,000 still. I still have some equity in that property. Now I've got 2 other properties that also have equity in. I have the same amount of equity, but I've got 3 properties now. Okay, so now we're like, here we go. We're excited now. We're working with the market. I've got 3 properties and I've got this going. What happens in 5 years? Well, if we take the old 6% rule, we know that $250,000 is going to be worth $335,000. Do I predict that's going to happen today in 5 years? Absolutely, with where the market is going. So we're going to be seeing that. We saw that in Toronto happen in 1 year. All the people moving here, we're going to see some action happening. So I've got that 2 properties now that are worth $335,000. I've got 1 property that's worth $350,000. Based on the numbers, it's worth $468,000. It's like, okay, now I'm ready for the next stage. 5 years from now, I'm going to pull out equity of those homes. Because guess what? Now I've got enough equity in those 3 homes that I have to buy another 2. So we're just going to repeat the process. Go to the bank. Banks take a look at what you're getting for rent, or take a look at all these sorts of things. As long as you've got a decent credit, you paid your bills and done this sort of thing, they're going to allow you to access that capital money to buy those next properties. Well, now if I do that, I've got $1.8 million worth of properties as compared to if I kept with that first one, it would be worth $468,000. Because I used the strategy of using my money and using leverage, I now have $1.8 million worth of real estate. So that is really exciting stuff. Okay. Now, is that clear as mud? Yeah. It's pretty basic, but it's a lot of information to take in, right? So, again, we just, basically on the next sheet here, we just gives you an idea now, a little bit longer term. What happens after the 5 years? Well, guess what? If I go to that next 20 years, I've got a lot of these properties paid off, and we take a look at this, like, oh my gosh, now I've got, after 20 years, anywhere between $3 and $5 million. I think that's probably enough to be able to do the things that you want. Now, some people might want to get 7 or 8 homes or 10, all depending on what they want their lifestyle to look like. So I recommend everybody decide where you want to be 25 years from now, because you'll probably achieve it if you actually decide where you want to be. It could take some cash, because I want to go to every F1 event around the world and go to all the World Series games and all the Super Bowls and have a home in Mexico and have one in Switzerland. And where are you at? What do you want? Okay, so that's really it. So just want to ask them. So Paula, you've been involved with residential real estate, so I think you've pretty close to followed this plan. Can you just share with us what has happened to you over the last 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I went through a breakup. So from there, I bought my own house in 2011. My job took me to Red Deer, so I needed to find a place to live temporarily in Red Deer while my daughter still stayed in Stettler. So I purchased a property in Red Deer in 2016, and then over a period of 6 more years, or 5 more years, I've been able to purchase 7 properties in total.
7 properties in total. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, and you did it just because you had a good job and you understood the concept and you wanted something bigger in life for your future.
That's
right? So today, what's the value of those properties?
Worth about $2.5 million.
About $2.5 million. That's pretty exciting to hear that. So $2.5 million, 20 years from now, is what? Wow.
Yeah.
Big numbers. It really is. Is it going to constantly be that 6%? Well, based on the past, it has. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We certainly know that the value of those properties are going to go up. We certainly know that the value of those mortgages are going to go down. So that gap is going to widen, and there's going to be a lot of equity there to do the things that you want to do. Hopefully not give it all to your kids. You spend it and have some fun yourself. But people are looking to try to take care of their children, and we're seeing a lot of that today. There's a lot of estate monies that are happening. Just in the last year, I had 2 people, I call them kids, but in their 30s, that actually bought their homes for cash. And these are not people that sold in Toronto and bought here, which we're seeing a lot of too. But we're seeing a lot of that happening. Why? Because the baby boomers are starting to keel over, and a lot of this estate money, these people that followed this plan are now handing it over to their children, and they're cashing out big time. So lucky you if that's what's happening, but that's happening a lot, and it's going to continue to happen a lot as the baby boomer ages as well. So thank you for sharing that information. Okay, so we know how to buy 5 properties in the next 5 years. Really simple. So now what do we do? It's like, okay, now we got to get smart. So let's have some tools and things to make us really sharp. And so what we've put together here is what makes a great real estate investment. So basically what it is whenever you see a property, you want to ask the same questions over and over again. So you can compare apples to apples. So there's a sheet here, and it gets into what area of town is the property located in, what's the quality of the surrounding properties. In other words, what's your neighbor look like? That's important. Take a look over the fence. What's that part? What's happening there? Is there transit nearby? We have this thing called an LRT, light rail transit. Everybody knows that within about 5 blocks of that, the values are increasing, and so we hopefully are going to have an LRT to South Edmonton one day. I mean, it's built 5 years ago, but we think they're going to get it running soon. And there's also one heading to the West End, and if you take a look at the further plans, it's going to be all over the place with that, which towns like Vancouver that I recently visited has an amazing one. I know Toronto's got it, and there's many other places that have it. And those for sure are factors in a great place to buy. What's the interior appeal? Here's a number of questions here, about 15 to 20 questions you want to ask, so that now, when you put 3 on the table, you can take a look and you can compare apples to apples. It's so important to be knowledgeable, having the tools that make you knowledgeable. You can make great choices. Oh, and there's that real estate person that's going to help you as well. Okay? All right, so be good friends with them. So, now, we don't have a ton of time, and I wanted to talk a little. You don't have the information in your booklets here, but it's about trending areas. So one of the things that we can supply for everybody, and we don't have one for everyone, is the MLS market heat map. What's the heat map? Well, a very smart person shared this with me not long ago, and what it shows is what areas are heating up. Sorry, guys, you don't have it there. We will send that off to you. Everybody's like, where is it? Where do I want to see the heat map? Where's the heat map? What kept some goodies? So the heat map really shows the activity in the areas that are changing and whatnot. But just to give you an idea of some of these areas, that are happening, and I mentioned the LRT system. Certainly the infill areas are super for that. Anywhere where you've got lots of land value and where you see that things are changing, if I think back, if anybody knows where the Alberta Avenue area is, and it's an area that nobody wanted to invest in. When I got in real estate, and I know it's a long time ago, okay, you could literally buy a property there for $15,000. At that time, the average price was about $115,000, but you could buy them there for $15,000. And you know what? You didn't have the greatest renters, and but there was a lot of people that started to invest there, and they started investing. Well, guess what? That whole place started to change. Renovations started to happen. Infill started to happen there. And now the average in those areas are probably about $250,000 to $300,000. Now these are older homes, but here's the cool thing about real estate. It doesn't matter about the house. It's the land value. The land value keeps increasing. That's the major part. So another great thing to think about, what's my land values compared to my house value? If I'm thinking as an investor, I want to make sure that my land value is at least 50%. Probably closer to about 75% or more. Great way to make sure you're investing properly, because then it doesn't really matter if that house is there or not. So land, so the sizes, corner lots, like one of our men here is really interested in and has been accepted on a backup offer. Sorry, it had several offers on it. It's nothing we could do.
We'll find something.
So corner lots are also really cool because you can do sort of many things with those as well. So again, where do we invest? What are these trending areas? I can easily sit on a map and just circle these areas that are happening. So, but it's going to be in that mid-price range, that mid probably to even mid-lower. Those are going to see significant changes over the next 5 years for sure. That does not mean that some of these newer areas are not great places to invest in. In fact, there's some great properties that are being built today that have legal suites in them and that have garage suites in them. They're made for investment properties. These are also great areas to invest in for sure. We could share those as well. Chappelle's one of those areas that's really doing that quite a bit. And these garage suites, everybody wants to be in these garage suites. They rent for so much. Little one-bedrooms, little tiny one-bedrooms are renting for $1,400, $1,500. No problem. Plus utilities on top of that. And they're small. We're talking 600 square feet. So just gives you an idea of some of the different things that are happening. So trending areas, again, probably that's a whole class to do that, but at least we give you a good idea of what's happening, and we will send you the heat map at some point. How's your $100? 50 if you put it down today. 30 if you put it in my pocket now. Okay, so now we're gonna get to the nitty gritty, and we're starting to tie in everything now. It's like, okay, the biggest fear that people have about real estate as an investment, and that is landlording. I don't wanna be a landlord. And you know, I learned the hard way. And I learned the good way. I learned the hard way because I knew I wanted to get involved in it, and I got inundated with calls and issues and things from tenants that made me not want to do it. So what I decided was I'm going to learn to do it properly. I'm going to learn what the experts do. I'm going to learn what property managers do. Do property managers want to get inundated with calls all day long and have problems? No. So what do? Well, let's take a look. The biggest reason for investors getting out of the business and not enjoying it is because of renters and the process of getting them in and keeping them low maintenance. The following pages are system, the hands-on investors, ones who do not use property management company can use to make the best of their time and money. When renting a property, there's some key things to understand. Potential renters always put on their best face in the initial meeting, always, of course. It's never the real person it is never the real person, so qualifying is key. Never rely on emotion when deciding. You'll almost always get burned. Oh my gosh, I got my dad to be my property manager for a while. Biggest mistake ever, because he believed everybody. You know, bless his soul. Not the right person to landlord. Lower your expectations on the way renters will treat the property. It's not their own and will be treated as such. That's a general rule. I'm not poo-pooing renters here. I know there's a lot of renters out there. But if it's not your property, you're probably not going to treat it as good. Well, let's find those people that do. There will be some time involved as property management, approximately 10 to 20 hours per year, per property. So 10 to 20 hours per year per property. Now let's be conservative again. Let's say 20, not 10. Now certainly I have some renters myself that it's been about 2 or 3 hours a year because they've been there for a long time and they're wonderful. And the property's increase in value. Why? Because they care for it. They paint it. They do all sorts of things. But 20 hours. Now if I take a look at that 20 hours and I make about $10,000 to $20,000 a year per one, that's about $1,000 an hour. $1,000 an hour. Is it okay for me to make $1,000 an hour? Yes, I want to make $1,000 an hour because that is what it is. That's fact. That's true. If you do it properly. Okay. How to go about it now, specifically? No phone. The worst thing you can do is invite people to call you on a regular basis. The phone will just keep coming and the calls just keep coming and coming and coming. So stay away from that. Telephone can be a huge headache, especially in a big city, in a big market. Do not be liberal with your phone number. You know, in some cases, maybe some small towns and whatnot, putting for rent signs with phone numbers, you know, you're going to get some calls, but not a lot of people today are driving around looking for rental properties. So not that big of an issue to put your number on a rental sign because people do it what? Online, for the most part. All right, so your ad, make sure your ad is properly. In your ad, direct the interest parties to an open house instead of the phone number. The key item to include your ads are the rent amount. Don't include utilities. Address, the time of the open house, number of bedrooms, availability date, and 2 attractive features of the property. A creative header is very important, and keep it as short as possible. So if you think about what's this concept about? Well, it's about not getting inundated with calls. It's about getting people to a situation and being efficient with your time. I cannot tell you how many rental open houses I've had. Why? Because it's so successful. So I get all these people to come. At the same time, I say to the current renter that's in there, hey, listen, have the place looking as good as it can. Because I'll only come once. But I want it to look great. You do that, you get a bottle of wine, because otherwise I'm going to be there, oh man, every day for the next 30 days. Does that sound like a good deal, Mr. Renter? Perfect. Okay? So now we've got the home looking good. And we got the current renter happy. Now, I got my time efficient as well. Now I'm bringing people at the same time, which creates urgency. If I go to a place, I got one place, and I got 10 people that want it, it makes everybody want it even more, right? So it creates urgency. Literally had people putting cash in my pockets. All you got to do is bring application forms and pens, and when they fill it out, ask a few general questions and mark down from 1 to 10 where you think they're at. And if you can, I know it's very difficult, take a look at the type of car they have, vehicle, okay? And you can as well, if you really like somebody, walk them out to their car and see what the inside of the car looks like. That has a lot to do with what people actually like, believe it or not. Very, very interesting. So psychology becomes part of this as well. We already talked about the preparation of the home. Tell the current tenants and make sure they have 2 hours of it looking great. Meeting them, okay? Again, I got ahead of myself here. We're meeting them, we're having this open house, and also let people know when they're there that they're interested, that you are going to make a decision very quickly, within 48 hours. Even today, I would say less than that. I would say 24 hours. Because what happens when they go home? Do they sit and wait for your call? No, they don't know if you're going to get it. They're going to get it. So they're going to what? Keep looking. So when you find the right person, it's very important that you follow the next steps, which is review the applications, take a look at their last residence. Have some great application forms. You always want to call who their past landlord was and make sure it's not their mom. And also, I also find that you do get a lot of truth from their bosses. So you call their place of work, ask, what's this person like, and you get a lot of really good information. So you take this from the landlord, you take it from there, and then you can also do a credit check. Credit checks are almost free today. I think it's $5 to do a credit check. You can find that information out. I find one of the best questions to ask is this: when I check your credit, what am I going to see? Do you always check the credit? Maybe you don't. But I'm going to tell you something. When you ask that question, what happens? People started talking. Well, I did this and this happened, sort of thing. It gives you a better idea of who you're dealing with, right? So it's so important to do that. So these are the questions, and this is how you make sure that you're getting the right people. And we talked about the previous landlords as well. And then number 6 here, contact them, contact and close. Contact them in order of preference and qualify them by asking for a deposit. Oh, e-transfer has changed the world for landlords. It's the sweetest thing that's happened to landlords. You can get your cash now. People that are very, very serious. Okay, do you have the money? Do you have the full month security? Well, they may or may not, depending on the price of the rental that you have, right? But you at least get a good idea of how much cash they have on hand. And I'll be very honest with you. Do we always take the first month's rent right away? No. There's sometimes people that need to collect their security deposits back, and so if it's the right people, not everybody has a whack of cash on hand. So you might start with $500 or $1,000 and give them a month or two. That's up to you whether you want to go that route. It's great to get it all up front. But now it's like, okay, now I got the cash. But here's the final part before they sign. You let them know you don't like phone calls. And if something happens with the property, they try to fix it themselves first. In other words, don't bug me. Now, I want to make this agreement with you. This is the way I like to treat my business. If there's something major wrong with the home or the appliances, go ahead and call me. But if it's a light bulb that's gone out and you're calling me, you're not the right person for me. So is this going to work for you or not? So setting the stage is really a great system. Do it. So you follow this system and make sure that you present a nice, clean home to these people. Buy them that nice Christmas gift. As long as they pay on time. Understand the amazing landlording rules that Alberta has as compared to the other parts of the country. Amazing. Oh man, I'm just hearing from Saskatchewan, I'm hearing from BC, I'm hearing from Ontario. It's like, I can't believe how great it is for landlords when it comes to how they deal with things. So some of the things that you can put in is what happens if they don't pay on rent on time, such as so many dollars per day on top of their rent. So it kind of motivates people. And again, if there are people and they're not answering that telephone call for where's my rent, and it goes 48 hours, putting that 14-day notice of eviction on the door usually makes the phone ring. So understanding the rules, understanding the contracts, there's some education that needs to be done for sure. But if you actually take a look at it, there's not a ton of information there. You just need to follow these basic rules. And if you do, you will be a successful investor and a successful landlord. No question. Any questions on landlording? Okay. Well, what we've done here is put together a checklist before you rent out your home. So this is just another tool for you with about 25 different questions in here to just, again, make sure that you're treating this like a business. And I'm just going to mention a couple other tidbits with it is where people run into issues and problems, because we learn by people's mistakes and we learn by people's successes. So when I am investing in real estate, it's a business. So do not put the finances in your personal finances. Open up another bank account. Perhaps it's with another bank as well. And keep funds completely separate. Very important to do that because it needs to run on itself. Does that mean you have a little bit of slush money in there in the very beginning? That might be a good idea to do that, no doubt. So keep everything separate, and again, it'll take away a lot of stress and a lot of problems. So again, very smart thing to do. So now, on sort of a final note, we have another document for everybody there in the last document, and that is the ROI sheet, so return on investment. So what is so cool about that is that the average person can really figure out what my ROI is, whether it's what my return on investment is going to be. You might need some help doing your very first one, but we laid it out here as simple as possible, and really it's all about again, comparing apples to apples, and you have your address, you have your price, you have your down payment, you have your improvements, in other words, the capital that you put in to the property. And then you take a look at your income. You then take a look at your expenses. You then tack in a little bit for appreciation and mortgage depreciation, because that's real. It's real dollars. And if you do the simple calculation from there, it tells you what your return on investment is. And I just happened to do one here, and I'm going to finish off on this note. I found a property that's got a little kitchen in the basement. It is a legal suite on this one. Now, it's listed for $300,000. And so people think, well, I want to have a legal suite. And yes, you know, if you're renting things out separately, you want to have that legal suite in there for sure. There's a lot of in-law suites that are out there that are grandfathered, and they're not really going to say too much about things, but we're not here to promote those sorts of things. We're here to promote getting maximum rent. But when you have a little kitchen in the basement, it does allow for multi-families to be in there. And I think COVID's brought this in a bit. I mean, the different generations of people that are happening, and you know, kids staying home longer, and you know, all sorts of things that are happening, is having that little bit of privacy in that basement creates a much larger rent as well. So having that little, if it's not a legal suite, having that little bar, having that little kitchen down there and that bathroom down there increases the value of that. So took a look at one here, and again, price of $300,000. Put the main floor in at $1,600, the basement suite down there at $1,100. Now this could easily rent for $2,500 to $2,600 without that legal suite down there as well, because it has a really nice garage in it too, and garages alone will rent for $300 a month in it. You know, garages are big here in Edmonton. And so, you know, we put in our appreciation, we put in our all of our expenses, our taxes, our insurance, our management. We put some management in, we put some vacancy in there as well. And, you know, we came to a whopping 45% ROI. 45% ROI. Now, that was not based on that big 20% down chunk. It was based on a lower percent down. But I'm gonna tell you, when you take a look at it from a 20% down with, the numbers are absolutely incredible as well. Who is making 45% on their money for 20 hours a year? The answer is nobody, or almost nobody, because I know there's that one person that's gonna be out there. But at the end of the day, it's an amazing thing to get involved in. Real estate investment is something that everybody should get involved in. It's what you should teach your kids to get involved in for that financial future that everybody wants. And it's not as hard as people think. So I hope you guys enjoyed the workshop today. Yay! Bye, everybody.